just fantasy now. Designs are bad. Pure Hoyo's flaw. Lost its identity. It's too much fan service. Not urban.
What makes a place urban is that only reserved for cramped Tokyo or Shanghai-style alleys, neon, 90s streetwear. The beloved 6th Street from Season 1 represented a neighborhood scale of urbanism that is intimate, local, and everybody knows your name. Whereas Roscaelifer brings its own take on urban with a capital scale, grand, institutional, and built for a whole city in the sky to move through. After playing ZZZ Season 3, Roscaelifer is urban, just a different flavor of urban than 6th Street. The game simply expands on what retro-futuristic urbanism is, with a European-style city that leans on specific, deliberate London-style accents. Urban just means relating to a city, dense population, shared space, streets built for a lot of people living close together, and Roscaelifer pulls from recognizable urban elements from London. For example, the iconic red telephone box, red post boxes, brick terraces, bay windows, cast iron lampposts, cabs, and litter bins. These exist because a lot of people are sharing the same public streets every day. You don't find high-density street furniture like that in rural areas because the population doesn't justify it. Brick terraces with bay windows are also built specifically to fit as many households as possible onto tight strips of city land while still letting in light. When you see these features, your brain immediately recognizes a place designed for crowded, shared living. Roscaelifer isn't using a generic fantasy look, it's using specific, recognizable London objects as shorthand for urbanism. If London provides Roscaelifer's street-level identity, Continental Europe provides its civic skeleton, the grand uniform plazas and park features, like the outdoor chessboards mirrored after Geneva's Parc de Bastion, point to deliberate top-down planning. You can see this clearly in the Buastrom district, which borrows heavily from Parisian houseman architecture. Buildings share a relatively uniform design. Ground floors reserved for shops, upper levels for apartments, and topped with slate mansard roofs and dormer windows. Even the layout uses low bridges over sky drops to mimic Amsterdam's canal ring, swapping water for empty air. This is capsule-scale urbanism. The sky becomes a canal system, creating an illusion of vast openness, while quietly funneling human movement along tightly controlled legible paths. Some critics might write Roscaelifer off as just a sterile, empty fantasy backdrop, but the environmental details tell a completely different story. Look around the streets and you see the immediate markers of a messy, lived-in city. Wanted posters slapped on walls, Bangboo graffiti, parked commuter bikes, and commercial ads, like this shoe advertisement. By the way, if you're interested in a fashion breakdown of ZZZ characters' shoes, make sure to check out my last video, and make sure to like and subscribe. These details aren't just aesthetic clutter. An area reads as urban because of core fundamentals: high population density, shared public space, heavy foot traffic, and constant daily exchange. Every poster, bike, and piece of graffiti is proof of that, all in motion. A big thing that made 6th Street so beloved is its incorporation of retro-futurism, like vinyl records, videotapes, and arcade gaming, into a bleak, apocalyptic urban environment. Roscaelifer brings its own retro-futuristic spin to it, where 6th Street leans into late 20th century analog nostalgia. Roscaelifer reaches back to the 1920s through 1940s, grounding itself in Art Deco and streamlined moderne. You see this immediately in the overhead blimps floating past the elevated sky lanes, planes. Rigid airships are the ultimate poster child for retrofuturism, capturing an era when people genuinely believed blimps, not airplanes, were the future of mass transit. It mirrors how classic Paris metro entrances mixed ornate decoration with heavy machinery. By using long aerodynamic curves, geometric towers, and metallic surfaces, Roscaelifer takes old-fashioned industrial infrastructure and makes it look glamorous, transforming routine city transit into a sleek, romantic vision of the future. Look at the sidewalks in the game, and you see two distinct visual languages standing side by side. On one hand, you have formal tailoring, long coats, sharp suits, and crisp uniforms with argyle knitwear patterns. On the other, you have youth subculture fashion with layered streetwear, including jackets, flared and baggy pants, crop tops, and leg warmers. This isn't a fantasy costume department making things up. Every one of these pieces has a real grounded reference point. Tailoring and knitwear pulled from old world European formal wear. Streetwear pulled from actual youth fashion movements. Nothing here is inventing a look out of thin air. It's remixing real clothing language. And that spectrum itself is a marker of urbanism. Cities are where different classes, ages, and subcultures share the same physical space. The same sidewalks, the same transit, the same shop fronts. A small homogeneous town doesn't provide this kind of visual range because it doesn't have the population density or social diversity to produce it. The wider the fashion spectrum in a single street, the more that street is functioning as an actual city. What stands out here is how these two fashion codes exist in the game without friction. The city doesn't force a conflict between classic status and youth subculture. Instead, it lets those two worlds sit together on the same street. Beyond what people wear, there is the question of where they gather. The game leans heavily into European third-place culture. These are spaces outside of home and work, designed purely for social life. Across Europe, that concept takes a few distinct shapes. Vienna treats coffee houses as extended living rooms, where people are expected to linger for hours. Italy relies on espresso bars for fast, frequent micro-connections right at the counter. Paris uses sidewalk cafés angled outward, making people watching a collective public ritual. The UK and Ireland center neighborhood social life around the pub. In places like Vienna, it's the practice itself, the habit of lingering, that's protected. It is not crazy to spend hours in a cafe on just a cup of coffee. These spaces turn commercial streets into social institutions. The sidewalks and outdoor tables at Cuppa Moments and Boom Scones, or True Blues and Spotlight Theater's night scene presence in-game perform that exact same function, giving the city its lived-in human and Bangboo pace. Then, we have the workforce keeping all of this running. Bangboos make up roughly 60% of Roscaelifer's population, integrated directly into daily labor. Urban planning in the real world is calibrated around human ergonomics, door heights, step intervals, sidewalk widths. Roscaelifer faces a much trickier design problem, building a dense sky city that works for humanoids and Bangboos at the same time. You see this dual-scale design play out in two different ways. In most of the city, Bangboo infrastructure is folded directly into human spaces. Dual-scale benches sitting side by side, Bangboo height touches layered into otherwise human-scale streets. But then there's Gear Street, a zone that isn't shared at all, built exclusively around Bangboo scale and Bangboo life, with no human infrastructure mixed in. That's two different models coexisting in the same city. Most of it treats Bangboos as folded into a shared space, while Gear Street functions more like its own dedicated district. It highlights a solid rule of urban design. True multi-species urbanism requires parallel infrastructure, not just additional bamboo spaces as an afterthought. Every real-world city relies on massive, largely invisible workforce to handle sanitation, transit, maintenance, and grid upkeep. Roscaelifer makes that entire workforce visible through bamboos working together with humans, therans, and other intelligent constructs, acting to keep the city running. That continuous labor from bamboo police officers, who also draw heavily from British police designs right down to the classic custodian helmet, to data boos, construction workers, administrative officers, bakers, maids, and more, keeps Roscaelifer alive. Which brings up a question hotly debated in this city. Who should get more favor in the city of the public service budget? Humans who aren't machines and are driven by emotions and desires, or the ever-reliable bamboos. They're the largest portion of the population here in the Celestial Nexus. It says a lot about an environment when a big and important part of its working class is non-human and designed to look cute while handling the heavy lifting. It keeps the city running smoothly while keeping the deeper civic and social tension just below the surface. Looking at the civic spaces in the game, imposing towers, grand art deco halls, overhead glass skylights, and that prominent central clock tower desk in the CCD headquarters. Real-world architecture has always aimed higher than basic logistics. Take Grand Central Terminal, built in 1913. It wasn't designed just to move commuters from point A to point B. It was rather meant to function as a grand civic gathering space and a physical monument to ambition. That history explains why Roscaelifer's civic spaces feel monumental rather than purely utilitarian. Major capitals historically treated public transit and government hubs as deliberate statements of power. That monumentality connects directly to the geography of the city itself. Roscaelifer floats high above the surface world, physically detached from the chaos and hollow threats plaguing New Eridu. It's basically the ultimate gated community in this world, linking back to the controlled movement of sky canals. This civic design enforces a very specific kind of insulation. The grandeur of the architecture reminds everyone inside who holds the keys. Beneath the surface grandeur, the transit lines shift to vaulted brick archways and tiled walls. That visual choice has historical roots in places like the early 1900s London Underground. Those stations used striking oxblood red glazed tiles on the exterior, paired with cream and white tiles on the inside. The interior tiling served a direct practical purpose. In an era of limited electrical lighting, pale reflective tiles bounced light around to make subterranean platforms feel brighter and less claustrophobic. Practical necessity drove the aesthetic. It's a reminder that even atmospheric design choices often started as clever engineering solutions to structural problems. Getting around the Roscaelifer means relying on transit. It's just as visually deliberate as the stations themselves. Citizens ride flying double-decker red buses and hail flying cabs to move through the Sky City, both direct echoes of London's most recognizable street-level transit. The classic red double-decker and the black cab. That sense of established wealth doesn't stop at government offices or transit hubs. Step inside the proxy's dorm and you'll see darkwood paneling, a deep velvet sofa, a working fireplace, and taxidermy antlers on the wall. That's the exact look Edwardian-era wealthy townhouse studies went for. The heavy darkwood rich tones, plus velvet upholstery and hunting trophies all served as a standard status markers for the landed gentry. What makes this worth noting is how that old money aesthetic behaves. It refuses to stay locked away in elite parlors or institutional government halls. It seeps all the way down into ordinary student housing. So, is Roscaelifer urban? Yes, Roscaelifer is capital scale, grand, institutional, and built for a whole city in the sky to move through. Different architectural vocabulary, but the same fundamental theme. Holding on to 6th Street's exact vibe forever was never realistic. A game built to run for years can't just recycle Season 1's aesthetic on repeat. It has to evolve or it stagnates. We already saw that shift with Wi-Fi Peninsula, flaws and all, and now again with Roscaelifer. Each region gives its own spin to what this game is, while staying true to the actual promise underneath it all. A retro urban fantasy world, not one fixed look frozen at launch.